Milne's work, the forward march of Labour halted in 1970s, where he argued that now traditional trade union were finished, the industrial working class was finished, and there would be no great disputes like there had been in the 19th and early 20th century. Then in 1980s, then the miners' strike hit them. The Labour leaders didn't want to believe it. It was actually happening, a classic industrial dispute, one of the most bitter, perhaps probably the most bitter in the 20th century, right before their eyes. And the Labour leaders then, what their response was to blame those who were the victims of violence for causing the violence, and people for saying, oh, you're preaching class hatred and class war, when in fact the people who were actually waging class war were the Tories and the ruling class. And Labour closed their eyes to that and actually sided with them. And the same situation persists today. The coalfields in some of the communities, the tiny, isolated ones, they actually felt themselves under occupation during the miners' strike. And in 1984, I went on the Troops Out delegation to Belfast, and there's a group of young miners with us from Fitzwilliam. It's far enough I know to tell this story. They went to Sinn Féin and asked for a meeting with the IRA, asked for arms and training to fight back. That was how serious the situation was in some of the mining areas. It was on the verge of civil war almost. And yet the Labour government, Neil Kinnock in particular, just condemned the whole thing about violence, the miners are causing violence. And when two young lads in South Wales did a slightly stupid thing of throwing a breeze block and killing a taxi driver, and for them that was, oh, this is it, the miners are showing how vicious they are and all that sort of thing. But in fact that was an act of desperation. The mining communities have been driven to desperation by what was happening then. And yet the Labour movement, the Labour leaders, and Norman Willis, I remember he came to Huddersfield and a few of us hung the noose in front of him. And this was after the miners' strike, and he still stood up on the side of it. But the Labour leadership completely sold out the miners, and ever since the rightward drift in the Labour movement has persisted, as we all know. But the point I'm making is, the fact is that if class struggle is being waged, then you've no alternative but to respond. It's not within your gift, and people will resist as long as they find themselves oppressed. And the nature of the working class has changed, the nature of communities has changed. People have said that there's still now an acute attack going on working class people. But the Tories are playing a very clever game like they played the miners' strike, which is divide and rule. So they're dividing people on benefits from people who work, people in the public sector from people in the private sector and all that sort of thing. But they are actually waging a vicious class war against us now at this time. And we've got to tell people that that's what's happening. As Joan said, we are in a situation of class war. But we've got to get this over to people, and of course the media is not going to reflect this reality which is happening. So it's incumbent on us all, I think, all the time to point out to people actually what is happening, and to say that violence in society isn't coming from people who are threatened and the people who are being oppressed by the economic system. It's coming from the state. And to attack people out of the bedroom tax and force people onto the breadline, that to me is an act of violence, and it's being waged by the state against ordinary people and against poor people in this country today. So I think we've got to be quite vociferous and try and explore this what's happening, and that's the legacy of the miners' strikes, to say, look, you can resist this sort of thing. As Joan alluded to earlier, the miners at one stage were on the verge of victory. I think it was in October of '84. The papers have come out since said that the government was on the point of caving in. And if they'd had the support of the Labour movement, I think the miners' strike, could have been successful. But the situation of today, it wasn't a foregone conclusion, it wasn't inevitable. It just shows that you've got to get the maximum solidarity amongst people, and you've got to fight back, whatever the cost is.